Not yet.
Okay.
Okay, tov everyone. Very happy Hamisha B'Av. The Shabbat, as we are all aware, is Shabbat Nachamu, the Shabbat that succeeds Tisha B'Av, and its name Shabbat Nachamu is taken from the first words of the Haftarah of the Navi Yeshayahu, Nachamu Nachamu Ami Yomar Elokeichem. It's customary amongst Ashkenazic Jews that even this Shabbat we add a further delicacy to our Shabbat meal. It's like a semi-holiday Shabbat. After the 3 weeks of mourning, we now enter 7 weeks of consolation, comfort that will take us to Rosh Hashanah and to the great and good year that will dawn upon us. Parshat V'Etchanan is always Parshat Shabbat Nachamu. Just like Parshat Dvarim is always the Parsha before Tisha B'Av. And there is some incongruity in this, because if we look at the first 2 sections, which are perhaps close to 30% of the Parsha, they are anything but comfort. They're anything but consolation. The rest of the Parsha, we have the 10 Commandments, Aseret Advorim, we have Shema Yisrael, we have Ohavtos Hashem Elokecha. We understand and appreciate both intellectually and emotionally why it's connected to Shabbat Nachamu. But the first 2 sections, the first section deals with Moshe. Moshe tears down the gates of heaven. Everyone, oh, let me go, let me just see. Let me witness the arrival of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. Let me see Or Atov Azeh Balabono. Now, one can easily imagine that Moshe Rabbeinu has enough credit in the bank to cash that check. We see it at the end of the Torah, at the end of Chumash Torah. Kol Hamosim, Sayora Chazaka, everything that Moshe did, we wouldn't exist without Moshe. Moshe sacrificed his life, literally, on behalf of the God of Israel and the people of Israel. So now he wants to enter the land of Israel. He wants to see it with his own eyes. And the Lord says to him, Al Tosiv Daber Li O Adover Azeh. I don't want you to raise this subject with me again. It's a closed book. There's not much consolation in that. There's not much optimistic feeling as to how we ordinary mortals, so to speak, will have any power to sway the judgment of heaven. Heaven is so exacting that even Moshe can't get past it. So what should ordinary people feel? So if you read that Parsha, and we hear it read tomorrow, it can be fairly depressing. Good thing about Kriyas Torah is we don't take it seriously. So it doesn't really bother us. But if we really thought about it, what kind of nachamu is that? And then the next parsha is even stronger. The next parsha is the Kriyas Torah for Tisha B'Av. The Aliyah for Levi. Ki tolid bonim uvnei bonim v'noshantem b'oretz. You'll be a long time in Eretz Yisrael. Centuries. And you'll take it for granted. You'll forget how you got there. And you'll forget how special you're supposed to be and how special the land is. All of that will be forgotten. And you'll become just like everyone else. You'll join the European Union. You'll be everybody else. And in order to do that, if the world adopts a certain type of value system, then you'll have to adopt it too. And if the world becomes pagan, so be it. So we're also pagans, God forbid. And so the Lord says, the Parsha says, there'll be terrible consequences. You'll lose the land. You'll be driven off of it. You'll go into an almost endless exile. You'll be the most persecuted of all peoples. So that's nachamu. You know, if you go to I had the good fortune this week, it cost me a little fortune, to go to a number of weddings. I'll discuss that too, because I saw the entire Jewish people at the different weddings, which is itself an interesting thing. But you go to a wedding, you give the chas and kala mazel tov, you dance, you sing, you enjoy. The photographer is taking pictures, it's everything wonderful. But if a guy comes in the middle of the wedding and he says it won't last, it's not a good shidduch. The wrong boy, the wrong girl. And there's a percentage that it doesn't last. Always has been that way. Yet no one even thinks to speak that way. No matter how No matter how nuts your uncle is, he still won't say that. Here, before they're going into Eretz Yisrael, Moshe is standing on the banks of the Jordan. And Moshe says, you're going to go in and you'll be there 100 years, but it won't last. How is that a comfort? How is that a consolation? So if it were up to me, and thank God, and now at a stage in life where practically nothing is up to me. So I would start the Parsha with the Aseret Advarim. I'd put these two sections back into Parsha Dvarim, which deals with Tisha B'Av, Echo, Esol, Vadi, Torchachem, Masachem, Rivchem, put it back there so that last week we know those are all sad things. Those are all black predictions. And this week we want to have Nechama, so start with Nechama. Why do you start again with two such, at the minimum, disturbing parshas? Moshe Rabbeinu is not going, and that the Jewish people are going to go into exile to be driven from the land of Israel. So that question gnawed at the psyche of the great commentators to the Torah. There are certain questions that even if they do not phrase it directly, even if they do not talk about it explicitly, you feel that it's somehow, it's a bee in their bonnet, that's something that's bothering them. So how do we look at this? So there's a famous discussion in the Medrash way back in the Chumash Shmos, in Parshat Bo. There, the Jewish people are on the cusp of leaving the land of Egypt, beginning our national adventure. In this week's Parsha of Et Hanan, the Torah tells us that the Ben Chacham, we have four sons, four types of sons. The Chacham is the wise one, the Rasha is the evil one, the Tam is the one that's naive, and the Sheni Yodei Elishol is the ignorant one. So this week's Parsha is the Ben Chacham. The other three are in Parshas Bo. All the Meforshim point out, and I'm sure that we know all of this from the Haggadah of Pesach, from the night of the Seder, the question of the Ben Chacham and the question of the Ben Rasha practically identical. What is all it is about? So the Ben Chacham, we say, what a wonderful question, huh? Terrific. So tell him, hey, we'll sit down, we'll learn the Gemara with him. The Ben Rasha, Hake Yeshinov. Give him a jolt. Same question. What do you want from the Rasha? What makes one a Chacham or what makes one a Rasha? So the Meforshim explain, which is a very, very sophisticated idea. You know, to be a Jew, you have to be sophisticated. I hate to tell you this, but you got to really get it. Can't just see things on the surface. And we live in a time where, deep thought is a very rare commodity about anything. Everything is instantaneous. What happens now? By the Ben Chacham, it says, "V'yo ki yisholcha bincha mochor leinu." The Ben Chacham will, tomorrow he will ask you. And so the question is, what is all it is about? By the Ben Rosha, the word mochar does not appear. It says, your children will ask you, the difference is mochar. How does it look tomorrow? Not today. That perspective of looking to the future is the key to wisdom and to Jewish survival. That's why in the Parsha of Et Hanan, it says, Ki tolid bonim uvnei bonim. When you come to Eretz Yisrael, nobody's going to bother you. You have no doubts. You fight wars, you win, you build a country. But the few generations down the pike, you become old in the land. Old in the sense that you don't look to the future anymore. You don't see what's going to be. And that's where all the trouble starts. And over and over again, we see this emphasized in the Torah. The Torah always plays a long-term game with us. What does it look like at the end? And human beings are very uncertain in such situations. So Moshe suffers a setback here, put it mildly. He's not going to go there to Israel. All of his prayers don't help. But the Midrashim point out that at the end, the Moshe is Moshe. No one knows where he's buried because he's not there. To the extent that his influence remains forever. I mean, Moshe is gone from us thousands of years. So even the greatest human beings, like I always use the example, in the time of the Rambam, Aristotle was pretty big. The Catholic Church under Thomas Aquinas had to adapt Catholicism, the Aristotelian philosophy. And the Muslim world, even Rashid had to deal with Aristotle. Aristotle was the gold standard. Therefore, you see the Rambam also. That was the basis for the great controversy about the Rambam. Was that he saw much of the wisdom of the world through Aristotelian eyes. Nobody knows Aristotle today. There are a few academics, but the academics today are interested in all sorts of different things. Nobody is nervous what Aristotle said or didn't say. So even something that has a staying power of 1,000 years or 2,000 years eventually evaporates. Not so Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Ribono Shel Olam tells Moshe, so to speak, you're quibbling about a small thing. In the long run of history, your place is assured, so to speak. He didn't go there, it's a shock. And the same thing with the Jewish people. The Lord says, all sorts of terrible things will happen and you get driven from the land. Everything is true, but you're still going to remain the Jewish people. You're still my people. You'll still survive. You'll still be the catalyst for everything that goes on in the world. So there is a very, very deep and long view of things. Chazal say that Avraham Avinu, our father Abraham, passed away 5 years earlier than his allotted time in the world. Yitzchak lived at 180, Yaakov less. Avram was supposed to live 180 also when he passed away. The Chumash teaches us at 175. So Rashi points out, what does it mean that he passed away 5 years earlier? So Rashi says, because the Lord did not want him to live to see what his grandson Esav would turn out to be. So he took him away early. So he didn't have that pain. A remarkable statement. Unfortunately, say if Esav's the Rosh Hashanah, Esav should have died 5 years early. So the reckoning of heaven is really beyond us, but that we have a glimpse of it. That in the long run of things that are negative are not always negative, and things that are positive are not always really positive. Hard to judge. And that's the true consolation. The true consolation is that we should not judge things by our own yardstick, by our own measurements, because they are faulty, because they're human. All human things are prone to error and to mistake, the bad judgment, all sorts of pressures. So the Navi Yeshayahu, who last week said such bitter things about the Jewish people, Am Keved Avon, Oni Zera Mareim, Oni Mashchisim, terrible things. And he says, Nachamu, Nachamu Am, be consoled. Because in the long run, the terrible things have within themselves a certain positivity. And if we don't see it now, we'll see it later. And if we don't understand it now, somehow later we will understand. Because I'll say that before the Churban, many of the great teachers of Israel passed away. It's true in our time also, for the Churban, that the Holocaust inflicted upon us, like a whole generation of great Jewish leaders passed away. And Chazal say that that's it so that they don't have to witness. So it's very hard for us to wrap our minds around that they didn't have to witness. But there is a certain reckoning of comfort. And so therefore it depends how much negativity do you want to see. So I mentioned this week I was at 2 weddings. One wedding was very, I hate to use the word, but it was very Haredi. And the other wedding was religious, but it was, on the edge. And in each of the weddings, there are people that don't belong. Because everybody's got a relative, or a neighbor, or a friend, or a boss, or an employee. And you can spot them immediately. But at the wedding, it's fine. It's good. But that's a comfort. Comfort that different people can be at the same wedding. And to me, the greatest comfort was that the wedding ceremony was exactly the same at both weddings. So that's part of the comfort, part of the consolation. Especially in our time when so much has taken place and we have suffered so great. So in the appreciation of these things, so the Gemara said that when the Ben Rosha said his question, so one of the Tanoim said, Psura Tova, it was a good thing that was said. God told us good news. When he tells us good news, you're going to have children that are Rishoyim. No, he told us you're going to have children. Yeah, there's going to be a future. There's going to be discussions. Yeah, they're going to argue about it. It's not over. But that's a tremendous comfort. That's a Psora Tova. And we put all of this together, so then Shabbos Nachamu has a certain flavor to it. There's a certain lesson for us that we can incorporate in all of the Shabbatot of the year, and it should always be times of personal good health and nachat and smachot. Shabbat Shalom. For the next 2 weeks, I hope in Mitzvah Hashem to be in America, so there will not be a class. Mm.